This is Kicking It with Jason. Gonna talk sports cards to you right now. Um, we're in the NBA season. There's been about 7, 8 games played. No clear dominant teams right now. Still early in the season. Um, I would even say basketball seems a little really different because there's no fans in the stands, and that what we call like that 6-man energy. The 6-man energy is when the home team can carry a team, persuade the mood, the energy in the building. It's not there, and I think it's showing up a lot in the games just from what I've seen with the scores and just watching some highlights and things like that. But one of the big highlights of the season, one that everybody's been waiting for, and it's been a year since we've seen this incredible basketball player play, is Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant is back. He's playing really well. He looks like his normal self. And, of course, that's showing up in the card market. Sports cards investors are buying Kevin Durant. His cards are up there, profitable, expensive, and it will continue to grow, especially with the fact that he's playing with Kyrie Irving. The Nets made the playoffs last year, so there's a lot of hope for this team. There's a lot of hope when you got two good players teamed up together, especially in the East Division. And this is why I bought Kevin Durant cards. I'm sure I can't remember the exact episode where I talked about Kevin Durant sports card, but it was in the past, April or so, even another time after that. But I was encouraging people to go buy Kevin Durant cards because I was researching on a good player to get, who like an underpriced one, and trying to figure out some investments. In April, Kevin Durant was still injured. He had a Topps 2 card that was $300. PSA 10, $300. I mean, that could seem a lot, but with the way cards are growing, and just how good of a player he is, and how good players right now in sports cards have very high prices, and seeing other players' prices, and just seeing their value be super expensive, I was like, well, that just makes sense for Kevin Durant. So I did some research. I remember reading up on an Instagram post where I saw, I can't remember what exact one it was, but it was somebody invested in this Kevin Durant card. The one I bought 2 of them. So I spent $600. And he was talking about the Topps 2 card. So I bought 2 of them. I later went and bought a PSA 9 for like $100 or something like that. And if I can go back, I think I definitely would have bought more. But I was pretty well stretched. I just dropped a lot at the time for some LeBron James 2019 Prism cards, which I hope will do well come later in the season. They're down a lot, but if I were to sell them right now, they would profit. But I'm expecting them to reach about 400. They're at about 100 right now. But anyway, back to Kevin Durant. So I was really stretched, and I was like, all right, so what can I get? Bought those cards. I remember I hopped on a podcast with my boy Joel. He lives in New Jersey, has a podcast called Pick a Side Sports. You gotta check him out. He's doing really well with him and his friends. But yeah, I hopped on a podcast and I was telling him the same thing. Like, people are sleeping on Kevin Durant because at the time, he was injured, recovering from his Achilles tear, big injury. People were skeptical, unsure, uneasy about how he's gonna play. I just knew he was gonna come back and do fine. So, here's what I wrote in the caption. I said, being aggressive and thinking ahead and just knowing your stuff can help a lot in sports cards. Here's how I did it with Kevin Durant Topps 2 PSA 10 card. Kevin Durant was out when cards were significantly low. $300 was a steal in April, a clear one. I knew he'd come back hard and would be his normal self, so I bought a few. Then Garyvee posted about this same exact card sometime later. He bought a few dozen of them. That gave it popularity, shot up to 800, being ahead of even the big investors in sports cards is also key. That's why I tell people be aggressive, because you just never know who's gonna post about a card like Garyvee, and they can really move the market. But anyway, it's important to be aggressive. Trends and influence run deep in cards. We haven't even seen the full force of that yet. Different story, another day, another podcast. By the way, it still would have shot up even if Garyvee didn't say a word because it's Kevin Durant, guys. It's proof. It's evident. He's a proven player. And now KD's back. He's dropping 25 points per game on people's heads with ease. So, of course, that card now is $2,000. It's going to keep going and going. So, yeah, I got a card that went from 300 to 2,000. And that's just being confident, just doing research, just knowing your stuff, just knowing about timing, knowing about trends. And, there's still a lot more opportunities out there. Can you find a card that can go from 300 to 2,000 in cards still? I believe so. You got to dig a little deeper. You got to put a lot more thought into things. Really be sure, really be right. Because a lot of the evidence stuff is already evident. And that's what I did with Kevin Durant. So I guess the takeaway on this is if there is a superstar that happens to have an injury, then you can find their cards low and you believe they're going to come back and be fine, buy it. There's that. Just hope players don't get injured. Be aggressive. Be aggressive in cards because things can move quick. Things can happen overnight. The card, like my plan was to buy at least 5 or 6 of those Kevin Durants. But things move fast. I got 2 of them. The same thing happened with Devin Booker. I planned to buy a lot of Devin Booker cards. I bought 1. But again, Garyvee posted about it. It got a lot of clout, got a lot of popularity, drove it up. Suns went to the bubble, almost made it to the playoffs, had some good basketball. Devin Booker was balling. And those cards shot up from like 160 to like 1,000 now. So, if I was more aggressive, I would have had more. But, so be aggressive, beat the trends, research, and you can do well. Go learn about sports cards.